Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, where we attempt to figure out the secrets of the universe and hopefully making it a little bit fun in the process. Hopefully. And in this video, we're going to talk about going to go a little bit deeper into the concepts of materialization and consistency, as well as time on the other side in higher dimensions of existence, the ones that some of us experience very frequently, whether that's through out-of-body experiences or contact with our deceased loved ones. That's another subject, but if you're new here, let's just say that there is a mountain volumes, libraries of information about the subject. Most of it is very consistent, and that's what we unpack on this channel because not many other people are doing that. So in this video, let's look at a couple of different posts on the forum and then tackle some of these complex subjects and hopefully not spend too much time doing it, because I do need to, on the topic of materializing apples and farming, I do need to actually fuel my physical body with food at some point today and go out to eat. So I'll try not to make this into a 2-hour video. Before we go further, though, you are watching Afterlife Topics. This is the stuff we talk about here. And if you like these crazy subjects, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, or maybe even consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. It's also a great way to work with me and talk to me one-on-one about anything and to help keep this channel going. So thank you. So to continue. So first I want to highlight a post by Mikhail Kush, and this was on the thread that I posted back in December about my astral experiences in Astral London, as well as with meeting the deceased Marine Corps gentleman who I potentially identified objectively his identity in this world. And I talk about this in the previous video, so go back and take a look at that if you want. So this is in relation to the topic of time as well as consistency and physics. And so Mikhail asks, is it only quantities that are fluid in the astral world, or is that also true of quantities, quantitative information, how much or how many of something, not only how much time has passed, how many years, but how many or other much of anything? For example, if two people go shopping together in an astral market and stop at a fruit stand, I might pick up an apple from a stack that to me appears to be a pile of Granny Smiths because that's what I like. But my fellow astral shopper might see Macintoshes, their own favorite. True enough? That's not too much of a headbender because we're already used to different perceptions of the qualities of the same objects here in this world. But say I buy 2 of those apples, put them in my bag, and go home. Then when I get home, I open the bag and there are 3 apples, just because I really had wanted 3 and not 2. Would such a shift be accepted as a natural occurrence, or maybe not even noticed? If yes, it raises a question: does 1 + 1 = 2? Does it have as much meaning for them as it does to us? Do the same rules of arithmetic and algebra apply with the same constancy on both sides, or are numbers more elastic, at least in terms of perception, or just less relevant? So let me say this. It's a lot to go over and very difficult to wrap all this up concisely. I believe that mathematics is a fundamental in existence. I don't think it goes away. We understand through direct spirit communication that there's scientific research labs on that side, which are more huge and involved than on this side. Even the work with Sonia Rinaldi involves what spirits have told us is a very large research station on the astral plane. That's how they're able to get very clear images of deceased people back to us. And these principles are scientific principles so much as based around mathematics. So no, I don't believe that 2 + 2 = 5 on the other side. Now, when it comes to quantities and materialized objects, so we learn through spirit communication, through astral experiences, and also a lot of the old spiritualist work. Like I can think back to Anthony Borgia talking about how there was always a cup of tea waiting for him. and that this was a manifestation, or maybe it wasn't Borgia, maybe in a Flint tape, but I think Borgia basically said the same thing, that your subconscious created this almost protocol that when you come home, there's always a cup of tea waiting for you, because some part of your higher self, your subconscious mind, set that system up in a nice, jovial, loving way, that every time you come home, you have a cup of tea waiting for you, that then you set the cup down and it disappears. You don't even think about it. It's just part of the system there. And that there's all kinds of individual tailored things like this which can happen to you. Here's the thing. So if two people go shopping in an astral market, and you buy 2 apples, you come back, there's a 3rd apple, would that be normal? I would say it would be normal. That kind of thing does happen on that side, and people don't think too much about it. They just accept that as their reality, the things that we would find bizarre, whimsical, or magical. That said, I also believe that there is personally, this is just an opinion, so don't cite this as some kind of gospel, and feel free to challenge it, but I think that there is some kind of a difference between the manifested object and the physically produced object on higher dimensions. And this actually goes into something Blazenko mentioned in his post. If I can find it real quick. So I had it, but then my cursor just messed up and then scrolled it away. Okay, I'm going to use my arrow keys. Blazenko says, if people in Afterlife don't need to dig out clay, bake it to make bricks, and then build houses from those bricks, I'm sure they likewise don't need to harm animals to eat and whatever. So this was a good conversation about, like, do people eat meat? And the consensus being, well, you wouldn't have to, hurt an animal to do that, because you can materialize things. But that's a different subject, not for this video. I'm using this post as an example about the materialization subject. Besides, even if food in the afterlife was purely vegetarian, does that mean that there's wheat and cornfields, agriculture, toil, digging, sweating, watering, sowing, reaping, making flour? I don't think so. Now here's why that may not be accurate, and I say this simply as a result of studying a lot of spirit communication, studying people's communications with their deceased loved ones via perpetual after-death contacts, as well as my own experiences. There is so much there which is surprisingly similar to here, and that includes manufacturing. It includes, like, you might see a factory on that side. You might see people farming. So why are they doing it? Are they doing it purely out of pleasure because they love farming? Or a company is just stuck in its old habits and is still needlessly manufacturing items? How can so much on the astral world look and seem similar to this side, yet have these different physics? Personally, here's the thing. When we look at those reports, for example, people come home, there's a cup of tea waiting for them, and that even people I've spoken to during my experiences describe similar things that happen to them. Then the cup of tea vanishes. From what I understand, and this is just my opinion from researching all of this so much, is that an object that is materialized from your mind is connected in some way to your mind, so that when you forget about that object tends to fade away and disappear, because it kind of goes back into your mind. And we produce these things through our memory banks. And so it's very much like in the film The Matrix, when they have this huge database of whatever they want, and they just materialize it. So weapons, guns, whatever it was, in that film, that they pull out of the system, because it's all data, and then they turn it into something real. And so in reality, it turns out all memories are an endless, infinite computer data system. So if you create something, then it enters the database. And then just almost like using a computer game, playing like some kind of a computer game or Second Life or something, you can just pull it out of the database, and now you're holding it. Now you're interacting with it. So if you had a cup of coffee you really loved once, you can pull it out of the database. But the thing is, if you look around the astral conditions, you would think then that there would be heaps of trash everywhere, because people are just pulling things out of the database and discarding them, throwing them on the ground. But you don't see that. Instead, when you pull something out of your mental database, it tends to go back into the database when you're not thinking about it. it kind of seems like be a natural system, because if you didn't, wouldn't there be mountains and mountains of trash on the astral side? But on the same note, you don't see like, it's not like a world where things are inconsistent, right? If what happens, you don't buy a car, then it turns into a horse, or you don't buy a horse and the horse disappears, right? So there's also material and goods that seem to be sticky, that don't go away, that stay in the environment. If you have a home on the astral side, it's not like your china dishware one day becomes a bunch of baby mice. Well, that is kind of how it is in dreams, isn't it? So when you're having dreams, it's this weird, inconsistent dream world. But that's the distinction with going to the astral side, is because it's a consistent place, to where, you can buy a lamp and put it on your desk, and then have an astral experience a year later, and then the lamp is still on your desk. So how do those materials not just disappear back into somebody's mental matrix? Well, the answer may be that items are produced physically and mentally, and the items that are produced mentally, maybe they disappear, but the items that are produced physically don't. So to use Blazinko's example, maybe they are digging, sweating, watering, sowing, making flour, because that becomes a physically produced object which sticks around. Whereas if you're just manifesting the flower, maybe that flower runs the risk of disappearing back into your mind. Now, I've also read about, and this might have been in Life in the World Unseen, don't quote me on that to make a mentally manifested object sticky, part of the environment, it's like you have to bring many people together, many different minds, to focus their energy to create something. And so long as, the more energy that's put into something, though, like the more consistent it becomes. So like in the creation of a building on the other side, that 20 people can come together, focus their energy, their intent on creating the building, then it manifests, and then now they've, created a building instead of having to hammer nails and do all this type of thing. And so that may be a factor as well. But the point is, it seems like objects, items are often created in a way that become real parts of the environment that don't disappear or float away. So when it comes to like buying the Granny Smith apples, it's hard to say. I don't think people just wouldn't care if an apple, if there was a third apple, because on a subconscious level you wanted it, so you manifested it. But maybe if you put those apples on the kitchen counter, that extra apple will eventually disappear because it was conjured, it was materialized. I'll put a final note just for fun. So there's a game I used to play called EverQuest on the computer. I still play it sometimes, and it's a huge time sink, but it's a massively multiplayer role-playing game. And so there's one class you can play, which is the magician. So the magician conjures and creates things, and so the magician can create items, weapons, and food. And so it's kind of funny, because you'd be playing this game, and if a magician creates food, because your characters have to eat, the problem with materialized food in the game is that it eventually disappears, or if you log out of the game, rather, it won't be there when you come back. So sometimes people will be like, in your group, you're out adventuring, going into a dungeon, somebody will say, hey, does anybody have any non-materialized food? Because all I have is this conjured stuff, but I need something that'll stay around when I log back in. And then somebody will have to go to the store and then buy like loaves of bread, then come back to Blackbar or whatever dungeon you're in, and keep fighting, because the materialized stuff wasn't as consistent. Now that seems like a very silly example. I'm talking about a computer game. Who cares about that, right? I personally believe that sometimes we can look deeply into the details of our life here and actually find hints and clues about higher dimensions, because we know so much about existence on higher dimensions intuitively, and I think sometimes it comes out in unexpected ways. Pop culture, TV shows, entertainment, video games, all of that. And we can analyze those things and actually learn what life in higher dimensions is like, because again, we remember all of that on a deeper soul level, and it's often coming through, especially in works of fiction. That's another great topic we can talk about next time. But this is complicated, kind of crazy. I think the main point, though, is don't discount the idea that there might be people farming, or there might be people like producing flour on that side, because I think that there's a physical component to production of goods as well as a mental component. Don't be surprised if there is a company that might be creating ice cream, But at the same time, if you want an ice cream cone really bad, if you practice and learn how to materialize, you can think back to your favorite cup of ice cream your favorite cone of ice cream that you've ever had, and then that's now in your mental database. Then you can pull it out and eat it, which probably would be difficult then for economics on that side, because if someone is producing physical goods, it has to be better than what your mind can already conjure, or else why even produce it? But then one last point about that: how can you learn about what you can produce out of your mind unless you have a template that's already available? Like, unless you once had the world's best cup of coffee, how will you know what the world's best cup of coffee is like to be able to manifest it out of your memory again and be able to drink it? So there is something to be said that you need to have access to those items so that it can be imprinted. A blueprint can be there so you can manifest it. So again, and I don't believe that the other side is a completely inconsistent dreamlike world where everything is just metaphorical or whatever. I believe that, as spirits have keep telling us again and again and again, if we just listen to what spirits actually tell us for 5 seconds, there won't be these debates about, are you a floating orb of light, or you're able to eat things, or are we made of pure energy, and blah blah blah. If you just listen to what spirits actually tell us, those won't be debates, because we can take information from the horse's mouth. If we only listen to authors who are just making theories and spitballing, then we're going to get weird or inaccurate information. Even from gurus, Hindu gurus, religious gurus, New Age gurus, they write popular books, they say this is the way it is. But again, it's not the way it is unless you dive into communications with deceased loved ones, astral experiences, real spirit communication, and then you get consistent, accurate data. Thanks for watching. This is Afterlife Topics. Pick up a book like Understanding Life After Death or The Afterlife and Beyond for more. These are available on Amazon. You can order them at Barnes & Noble. Check out afterlifetopics.com, or book a coaching session with me if you want to work with me one-on-one. Just email me down below. At the bottom left side of the screen, you'll see my email address. Thanks for watching, and thank you to all the patrons helping keep this work going. Sorry videos have been less consistent lately. Been, again, in weird Wi-Fi situations, so bear with me. Anyway, talk to you next time.